Hello everybody and welcome. This is Mana from Mana Chats, and we are going to be talking a little bit about something interesting in character and out of character in more detail, and a more nuanced take on some of it, and some parts of it that I think the community rarely discusses. You may have noticed, or you may not have noticed, that I changed my character's name from Mana No to Managin. It's very similar. I still run around. I'm still on Moonguard. If you ever see me and want to say hi, well, there you go. Now you know. But changed that for a few reasons. I used to have that name on Wormrest Accord Alliance, but I wasn't able to get it on Moonguard. Now I have it again. But we're not going to focus on that at the moment. We're going to focus on this in-character and out-of-character discussion. I think this is a classic phrase that has a lot of meaning, but one that often doesn't get discussed with nuance. It's sort of become shorthand that people forget is shorthand, and they throw that line at people and they assume they know what it means, and they don't really go into how people can misuse it. And on this channel, when I'm talking about roleplay, I like to go into excessive detail because I find that people who get the most use out of this are people who are new and who want to sort of understand how they're going to dive in, and might have to deal with people who act very odd, because some people in the roleplay community can be very strange. And I think that's something to accept and something to take on and to understand. There are going to be people who are not well adjusted, and you don't want those people to dominate your stories or to make you feel like you're doing something weird when you aren't. So I'm here to arm you with basic knowledge and give you a little bit of understanding about that. So with IC doesn't equal OOC, or in character doesn't equal out of character, there are a few good meanings and a few twisted, messed up meanings that one could take from this. And I aim to explain both and correct the twisted ones so you know what is right and what isn't right. So first, there are people who try way too hard to maintain a divide between in character and out of character. They do this to the point where it's a detriment to their roleplay, because people don't know if they're just being aloof, if they're cold, what they're thinking, and it becomes very difficult to even know what storylines you're going for. It becomes difficult to even know when to meet up for roleplay. It gets to the point where you aren't sure if that person cares at all about what you're doing, and that can be kind of, well, negative. It may not be enjoyable for someone to engage with that. There are also people who try to combine the two things too much. People who feel like, oh, you know, our characters like each other in character, they're in love in character, and that means that out of character, you have to express those same feelings for me and support me no matter what. And hey, can you gear me up? Hey, can you have me join your guild? Hey, can I invade every single space that you have? Well, of course those things aren't okay. We need to have a healthy, balanced approach, and we need to understand what are good boundaries. So let's get a little bit into that. The general rule and the shorthand is pretty great. In character doesn't equal out of character. A lot of people will be able to inherently understand some of the concepts behind it. Very few people talk about the twisted version of it, where people try to misuse it to sort of browbeat you and do some questionable things and manipulate you, but we'll talk about that now, so you'll be ready right afterwards. I think some people who are more social in general and, you know, their outlet isn't just roleplay will understand this inherently, but there are lots of people who fall for these tricks in general, even if they are fairly social, so I think it'll be something useful. Now, first and foremost, I want to mention that it's fine and healthy for you to feel things about your character. If you read a book, watch a movie, read a manga, read a comic, you've probably felt for characters before. And these characters aren't real, and we know that. But people can still cry about what happens to a character. They can still really want two characters to fall in love. They can still feel angry over how a villain treats somebody, or how sinister someone's being, or how unfair and cruel the world can be to a certain character. These things are normal in media, and even though they are fake characters, we can still accept that. They're not real people we know. The same thing can apply to roleplay. After all, why shouldn't it be? You're just writing, so of course you're going to feel something. The difference is that you're probably writing from the heart, and to have someone criticize that or tear that down or mess with it in any way can be difficult. It's okay to feel things. What is not okay is taking out your feelings on someone in a way that doesn't really make sense. So here's where the normal definition of in character doesn't equal out of character comes in. You don't want to take out your feelings on other people in a way that doesn't really fit the scene. You shouldn't act on knowledge that your in character persona doesn't have. So if someone tells you something out of character and you act on it in character, you are crossing that gap of the in character and out of character divide in a bad way. You are taking on information that you shouldn't have and using it to probably act in a negative way. In a similar vein, if you have some tough issues going on in real life, for example, let's say you have some stresses going on, or you have a bad day, and you start just acting really ornery, like online, and you start being very, very rude to people, and you start being, you know, just negative to everyone, you start insulting them and making it an unpleasant experience, or even just being randomly cold to people that in character you have no real reason to do that to, well, they have no way of knowing that your real life day went badly, and you making them feel like they did something wrong is probably just going to confuse them. Maybe in character, they're just going to stop interacting with you as much. Maybe out of character, they even get confused and they wonder, oh, did I like miss something in the role play? So you need to avoid making that happen to someone. You need to make sure that you are having clarity between what is from you and what is from your character. You do need to see this divide. You shouldn't have your out of character feelings and in character feelings necessarily influence each other to the point where other people can see it. It should be something you can maintain. If you start to become unable to maintain it, there probably is a little too much crossover going on, and you may be getting too invested one way or the other. Now, there are healthy ways you can deal with problems you have in real life in an RP setting. As a quick and easy example, let's say you have a breakup. Well, maybe you talk about having an experience like that in your character's backstory, and you see how your in-character friends might react and what advice they might give you. This could be a healthy way to process that, to deal with it, and not connect it too much to your actual example. You shouldn't, of course, be talking about a parallel that is a little, well, too parallel to reality, so you don't want to throw in unnecessary details. It is best to have some degree of a divide between yourself and your in-character self. It also tends to create healthier and more well-rounded characters if you're giving them their own personality and not just assuming it's the same as you, because you will go through character development of your own in real life that your in-character person might not, and that could really throw things off a little bit. Now, there are also important other situations. For example, in character, you might be having situations where you feel like you're being put to the side, and out of character this might tie together. You might recognize, hey, I'm clearly being ignored, my posts aren't being read as thoroughly, my attacks in this event aren't being considered as seriously as other people's. If you see these two things together, then your IC and OOC persona can sort of meet together, sort of shake hands, and you can understand, hey, this is kind of baloney. I can clearly tell that I'm being treated badly, and I see it on both fronts. Well, then of course it's fine for both of those sides of you to interact and for it to be something of a discussion that could come up. You could tell the event runner or your partner in RP, hey, I'm seeing this both in character and out of character, let's talk about it. And that is totally fine, as long as you're able to have a civil conversation about it. Now, one thing that can be negative with the IC and OOC connection that people try to put forth is some people believe that means there are no consequences, no paying for their actions in one area or the other. Oftentimes what people try to do with this one is they try to manipulate a little bit. In character, they might do something that feels very insincere, or it feels like they're mistreating your character, like we mentioned before, in an event, or maybe you just feel bad about something they did in character. Well, they can't then just tell you, well, IC doesn't equal OOC, and shut down a communication about it. No, you are allowed to communicate OOC even if the actions are IC. You can express those things. They can be discussed. It's just that it has to be, again, in that calm sort of manner. One easy example is in romance. It's easy to see how poor communication can really ruin a character. It can really ruin a story you're trying to tell. And it can greatly influence this sort of issue. And it might be seen as IC and OOC because so many people will dismiss complaints as if you had caught feelings in real life. Well, that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. You can call out someone for, let's say, being, for lying about the fact that you're their only partner in character, or for having too many things going on that they don't tell you about, let's say. You could have a very real conversation about that, and even though your character might not know that IC, out of character, you can still have feelings about that and feel that this is not a good direction for your characters because eventually it'll come up. Or you might feel that them hiding it from you out of character is sort of like trying to hide something from you in character, and that it makes you uncomfortable. That's fine. You are allowed to feel those things, and those sorts of discussions should and can happen. You shouldn't be dismissed for bringing it up at all, and that's not going too far to see a pattern and to react to it. Again, the key point, though, is that you don't get to make extreme judgment calls on that. Their RP simply is not the type of RP you might enjoy the most. Or you might feel, hey, I want my character to be special to yours. If that's not really the case and you have like 8 other people you're doing stuff with, I don't really want to be part of that. You know, that's just not acceptable to me. It's fine that you do it, but for me, I just want to bow out of it. That's fine. Just don't take it the extra step and start insulting the person and saying, oh, you're a cheater, you're a lying bastard, you do all this stuff. Because again, it's role play. You don't have the monopoly on their actual emotions. It's just a collaborative story. If you don't like the collaborative story, you can say, hey, I just don't like the direction it's going. Keep it simple, keep it clean. Now, communication beforehand is really important. That's why people often talk about having, again, that gap bridged. So that's another time where you should have IC and OOC sort of shake hands and meet. If you're getting closer to a character, it's fine to have a little talk and say like, hey, I just wanted to check in. You know, like, I'm really liking this storyline. Like, where do you want to go with this? Is this an exclusive thing? You know, because most people, when they talk about this, it tends to have to do with romance. But it can also have to do with event running. Like, it could be, hey, I really enjoy running with this group, but I want my character to have, you know, a set place here. I feel like sometimes my character doesn't get to be treated as if they're, you know, this strong, or they don't get treated with the respect that they really should have after assisting with this. You can bring these things up, and it's fine to talk about. I think that if someone accuses you of caring too much, or of crossing the gap in an unhealthy way within character and out of character when this happens, that they're really being the one who's insincere. Things are just roleplay. Yes, that's what IC doesn't equal OOC means. However, it doesn't mean that these stories don't matter. It doesn't mean that it's wrong or right to be duplicitous, let's say. You can be duplicitous in character, but if you're being so out of character, that can influence how someone sees you in character, because they know who's behind the screen to an extent. It's the same reason why if someone has, let's say, a really negative story going on about them, people aren't simply going to say, well, IC doesn't equal OOC, so I better ignore all these things that are massive red flags because they're out of character and I wouldn't know that in character. It doesn't make sense. So just keep that in mind with you. I think that with in-character and out-of-character stories, there's really just a lot of times where the handshake between them is important, where you are allowed to have them influence each other. It's really just about keeping your feelings separate, not insulting people between them, and understanding that people shouldn't be using them to stifle conversation. I think that's a really important nuance, worthy enough of making a little 15-minute video about it. Just to give some quick examples of things that maybe have occurred for me before I end the video, just so you have an idea of what I really mean in case my rambling doesn't quite hit it for you. let's give an example of a healthy IC and OOC interaction. Let's give one that happened to me recently. I was walking around, I met a character that I've been meeting for a while, and we were chatting. And they let me know in a whisper, hey, there's someone nearby who has talked to us before. And it turned out that, you know, one of our mutual friends and I were approached, and we were told that this character is another character who has a lot of heinous things written about them. Nothing that was like super horrible, but this person was been known to power game. They've been known to metagame. They just disrupt RP a lot. They're very edgy, and I just don't want to do storylines with them. Now, I completely had forgotten this character because I didn't even mark them on my TRP, which I usually do. I mark if I at least met someone and if I got their name. But I didn't even have this person marked. I'm not going to share the name, by the way. But anyways, I looked up the person. I confirmed that there were, in fact, stories circulating, but it was all kind of vague. So, you know, without confirmation, without anything like that, I just wasn't really willing to say I'm going to chastise this person. But I'm also not going to seek out to roleplay with them. I mean, if they're a power gamer, that's the last kind of person I want to interact with, especially because they were a character that apparently, and I had forgotten this, but the other person reminded me, they were somebody who had approached me and said, oh, I've heard stuff about you. You have a reputation. And they walked away like mysteriously. It's one of the situations where a mutual friend told me about it. And even though it's an out of character thing, I was not trying to interact with this character at all. So now, from now on, in respect of my friend, I'm not going to try and interact with this character because I have no reason to. I've had no prior interactions with them. But this in-character and out-of-character connection was fair. Someone expressed to me there's discomfort with someone else, and I can respect that. I looked it up myself. I'm not going to be hateful and call this person out and assume I know everything about them, but I'm not going to reach over and ignore what an RP partner of mine is asking for. So that's a healthy in-character and out-of-character connection, even though it doesn't really fit. Even though it doesn't really fit in character, we don't know that this person is a problem in character. Out of character, one of us did, and in character, we're going to take an action based on that, and that is entirely fine. So in that case, in character and out of character can shake hands and again have some purpose. Let's go to a negative in character and out of character connection. I want to use one that's from years back because I don't like to refer to things that might be current because, you know, dramas happen and it's kind of normal. There was a time when I was role-playing a romance with a character, right? And this was many years ago, probably like 7 or so years ago, maybe a little bit more. And this character had like showing up. They weren't around as much. They stopped playing out of the blue for 3 months or so. And, you know, never on BattleNet, no message telling me that they had basically quit playing. And so I moved my character story along. I made up some reason that they went up and separated, but I wasn't going to sit there and wait for 3 months without any prior information for my character to move forward. Now, they didn't jump immediately back into a full-on relationship, but they were being willing and welcome to people approaching them, and I think that that's relatively fair. RP time kind of moves a little faster, and if you don't tell someone something and you don't communicate and you have definitely had chances to do so, then, you know, I'm not going to sit there and wait around forever. But this person came back much later and was kind of acting in character like I had betrayed them. They were trying to frame it as, oh, you know, we were together, whatever, blah, 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 blah. You can imagine. And I just wasn't having any of it in character or out of character. They had way too much bleed, and they were trying to accuse me out of character of being insincere, of whatever. And I just straight up told them, like, look, this is a mutual story we're telling, and you kind of just bailed out on me. You don't get to just make me wait for months and months and months and do that. That's just not normal. It's not fair. And, you know, if you want to try and make something work, I'm open to it. I wasn't really back into the full swing with someone else, but it's going to have to be something where we treat this fact that you were gone as something that happened. Because at this point, I've written that into my character and you didn't give me anything else to work with. Now, it wasn't going to be a big issue. I really had no problem with just getting back into the swing of things. I mean, I recently had someone from 8 years ago who, you know, was a very close friend of mine, both out of character and in character, show back up in RP and show back up as somebody I talk to regularly. And our relationship kicked back off, like, as a friendship. I don't mean like more than that, but these things can be fixed and it can be no issue. And it wasn't really something where my character held it against them or something like that. It's just something that should be acknowledged. So I think that is something that is kind of important. Another example of oddness in character and out of character. There was somebody who was whispering me a lot out of character. They were talking about how, you know, how cute my character was. Oh, I really like your art. Oh, you know, I really like the art you do of this. And oh, like they're so funny. Like they start to interact with me a little bit, but more from the sides, more like watching me in roleplay and then, you know, having some side commentary. And they were laying on the compliments, and you know, that's nice and all, but I didn't really know them that well. And they started to get very bitter and upset that I had closeness with some of the other characters. And it was just stuff like, you know, hanging out with them, you know, putting an arm around a friend, like sharing a drink. Like it wasn't anything crazy. They were acting extremely possessive. Again, that was an OOC connection, that they were starting to act like they had an IC right to my character. And it was like, no, I mean, even OOC, I don't know you that much. You've thrown some compliments my way. You said nice things, but that doesn't mean I owe you anything. People try to pull these sorts of manipulations all the time, though. It's very common. It happens in real life. It happens in RP. That's an example where someone's OOC perception was influencing their in-character one, and it just wasn't really there. So I think that that's something where, you know, you can see, okay, that's kind of messed up. They're trying to manipulate a bit. A pretty clear-cut case. Let's look at another instance. There's a character who I was interacting with, like kind of tertiary. Like I knew we were kind of operating in the same circles. I was kind of running into some of their characters' actions, and I was running into their characters' friends, and there were some adventures that happened, and everything was pretty cordial. But I really didn't like the way they were treating some people in their storylines. It was one of those things where you have to be on like all the time. You have to be, you know, at their beck and call. If you miss an event, well, you're just written out of it. Only certain characters seem to really matter. You know, it was a lot of, let's say, clear spotlighting. Despite claiming that it was open to everyone, it's obvious only a few people were being served by these storylines. Make a long story short, one of our mutual friends invited me to an event to show up, and I did show up, and I was there on time, and I was interacting and trying to make the most of it. But this character, for some reason, even though I don't think we've had any issues, this character was not being very inviting to mine. And even asking a simple question, which their character was all about, got a very neutral answer. To put it clearly, like they were a mercenary type, and they were somewhat infamous for, you know, like getting the payment for their job, which makes total sense, of course. You know, no one wants to work for free, and a big mantra of theirs was sort of about the fact that, you know, only suckers work for free. But when it came to this event, all of a sudden that wasn't a thing. You know, my character, and even though it's fake money, it's RP money, and they were not willing to even offer like a favor in exchange for something that was going to be work for my character to do. So it was kind of weird. I mean, how could a mercenary character do that? Why would they put that barrier of entry in? It was a little bizarre. It left a bad taste in my mouth, and I tend to listen to those bad tastes in my mouth because, you know, I've been around the block enough to know when people are acting a little suspicious there. But regardless, I stuck around, and they were kind of being difficult about inviting me to the group, and they kept asking, like, are you sure? Oh, your friend's actually not over here. Oh, you know, like they left for a bit because the friend who invited me like stepped away and was swapping to a different character or whatever to join this event. But it was very strange. Now, they kept insisting, oh, like, we're just going to go for like a little walk. It's not going to be a big deal. So if you don't want to come along, it's fine. It was obvious that they just didn't want me there. Like, I could tell, but they weren't being forward enough to say it in character or out of character, which I think was pretty lame. But they then invite me, and it's like a 15-man raid group. and it's clear there's this whole event planned, and that really rubbed me the wrong way, because they were really pushing so hard not to invite me. I only got into the group like I insisted, which was weird because I was invited to it to begin with by a mutual friend of ours. And it really was just something where I can tell this person just wasn't respecting me out of character, because you don't do that to someone and have this big event planned but try to frame it as if nothing's going on. If they were simply full, they could have said, hey, you know, we have a lot of people coming to this, I don't want to invite more people, whatever. But they were expressly out looking to gather people. So I don't know where that situation came from. Could be a misunderstanding, but that left a really bad taste in my mouth about it. And so out of character, I was sort of put off by it. And so now in character, when I see that person, I am a lot colder with them. It's not really the fairest thing in some ways, but I think it's a healthy barrier to have. If you get a bad feeling from someone, put that barrier up. If the person wants to reach out to me and wants to show that they have respect or they value my time, then I'll be happy to interact, and I'll give a lot of good interactions for that. I put a lot of my heart into these things. But if they're pulling that kind of thing where it feels like they're not even brave enough to, or I would say not even respectful enough, not even human enough, it's not about bravery, it's just about basic respect. They don't have enough respect to talk about it, or to not invite someone, or to say, hey, like, I don't actually want this person here, or to even tell me whatever their problem might be. I can't imagine what it was, because I mean, I barely interact with them, and with most people I try to be pretty fair. I have no idea. Point is, in those instances, you can let your out of character perspective influence your in character one. You do it with some class, though, with some grace. You don't have to justify everything. You don't have to literally walk up to someone and say, hey, you mistreated me this one time out of character. Just don't interact with them as much. Let the ball be in their court. It's a very simple thing. I think you are able to do that. You're allowed to do that. And that is a good way to really understand how to handle that situation. I could easily be flying off the handle and listing that guy's name and say, oh, like this character who, you know, whose name sounds like this, and do some cheesy thing where, you know, I'm trying to call him out. I'm not going to do that. And I don't think I think that would be a perfect example of someone whose IC and OOC is in a bad spot where they're connecting them, because this was ultimately something that might not even be a real negative experience. It might have just been miscommunication, might have been for any number of reasons. But I bring it up as a story just because I did feel negatively about it, and you will at times feel negatively about situations like that, but you should know where the line is. If someone's not going out of their way to screw you over, and they're not going out of their way to be negative, don't make it something bigger, because that's when you start drama. And drama can be something that really destroys your enjoyment of this medium. Now, my next video that I'm going to do is going to be about drama. What happens when you get into it, how to get out of it, maybe some examples, but I think that's something that could be handy. I know I ranted a little bit about some personal stories there. A lot of this is off the cuff. I have a very limited script that I tend to write for these things, usually just a few bullet points. That's why you sometimes hear some background noise and everything. But I think there's a kind of niceness in just being able to talk things out, you know, to chat, which, I mean, I guess that kind of fits in my channel name. It also is a lot easier to edit because I don't edit anything. But the point is, I like to do this kind of naturally because it's a little bit more authentic, and I don't need to jump cut every 5 seconds to have a conversation. I think it's kind of sad that people have this sort of situations go on, but I digress. I'm not going to, you know, start commenting on greater things I notice out there. I think that I want to say to everyone who watched these videos and get something out of them, thank you so much for watching. And thank you so much to the people who've reached out to me, whether in game or in the comments, to say thank you. Recently, someone sent a really nice message to me in a whisper, telling me about how they've been able to get RP, how they've been enjoying it so much, how my videos helped them out a lot, how they got started, and just how much they've really loved it, and they had no idea where to start. And I was kind of blown away because, I mean, someone finding my stuff, it's pretty limited. I mean, it's really only posted on the subreddit, and then I guess maybe through whatever natural engagement might come from the algorithm, which I'm sure is small for these. But you know, I really do appreciate that. And if you have any topics that have come up, anything you want to know about with role play, I am very happy to answer that. I might talk about how to handle longer run characters. For example, Mana here is I think about to be 13 years old in terms of how long she's existed. So that's quite a while for her to exist in RP. As a quick aside, if you have a character that long around, I recommend writing bullet points or very quick overviews of history, more for your own use, which I wrote right here because I don't expect anyone to read that, but I do recommend that. In terms of immediate future, though, I'm going to do that drama video. I'm going to do a video on some advanced tips in roleplay. I'm going to do a video on specific toys and setups that you can do to kind of make marketplaces and to try and make a setting appear a little bit more real, and some fun things you can do with toys to make whole events around them, because I've had a little more experience doing that. I'm gonna do a video on how to make a fun and personalized TRP item and some of the cool things that you can do with TRP. And I'm just trying to make it nice and clear so I can guide people through that process. And then I think I'm gonna do a little video on all the romantic outings people can take in, you know, World of Warcraft and the things they can do there, because I know a lot of people are interested in that topic. So I'm going to go over locations, I'm going to go over ideas, and give you some things that you can work in there, as well as some pitfalls that come with people who try to jump into those things and end up shooting themselves in the foot and ruining it. So those are some of the stories and, well, not stories, but some of the videos I'm going to be doing in the near future. I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope it made some sense, and I hope for some of you it gives you something to think about. That's all. Goodbye.